Welcome back to another episode of these crazy people that just eat meat and can't stop talking about it. It's Justin All Out Life Carnivore and Tom Clark with a strange video delay. Not sure what's going on. We've been having glitches and freezes, and maybe it's time to find a new service. Not really sure. So Justin's giving the nod to his wife over there.
Yeah,
She's
exactly it.
probably giving him the hand signals like, are you online? Are you recording? Are
Yeah,
you doing video? What are you doing?
no, the total glitch is back where I go completely out. We had such a good first week when I first moved into this place, and now it's back.
Yeah, she turned on a light behind your head, then she turned off the light in front of your face, and then she turned it back on. So now you got a
That
nice
lighting,
nice glare on your forehead
I
and a
guess
bright
those
light up in the
lights need to
corner.
go down. These
It's the
lights,
one turn the one
turn
off behind you.
there.
No, not
No,
that one. No,
other
the
one then,
other
honey.
one.
That
Oh
one's
my
fine.
god.
That one off. Okay, there we go. That's good. Thank
There
you.
you go.
There we go.
Now you got your warm tones back.
Ah, there we go.
Got rid of
Not
that
washed out.
giant white ball of light on your forehead. Well, hello, Keto. I'm sorry, 5150 Keto Warrior, aka
Excuse me.
aka Justin's gonna cough instead of say your name. Do you guys know anything about mold toxicity? Well, what I know about mold toxicity is different people are allergic to different kinds of mold at different degrees. If you got mold, oh, Marge is in the house. Hi, Marge,
Hey, Marge.
Miami Marge. Um, if you think you got, I mean, number one, you can get, there are tests, not necessarily allergy tests are 100% reliable, but, and you can also test your home. There's a variety of different tests that you can get, and they're not cheap. Good ones probably start at 50, probably go up to $100, but, it's usually, people usually react to mold contaminants in the air. So, what kind of symptoms do you have? 5150. I was completely frozen for a minute. Yeah, Marge has inquired about this too. So,
And you should certainly stay away from that black mold, from what I hear.
oh look, we haven't seen Vanessa in a little while.
Hey, Vanessa. So it seems to be that it can cause like a chronic infection in people or chronic infections in people where they just keep getting these infections, whether it be like a sinus infection, throat infection, ear infection, sometimes in different parts of the body, but usually in the respiratory system. Um, or it can lead to SIRS, which I don't exactly remember what that is. But Lady Carnivory and Barbara have some great stuff, and they even have a SIRS group. It's CIRS, and I forget what it stands for, but yeah, it was like the mold toxicity leading to underlying chronic infections that seem to, even with a carnivore diet, hamper or prevent full healing of X, Y, and Z. So some people that have been carnivore for a while, like Barbara and um, Lady Carnivory, they found that there was this underlying infection. I'm not quite sure if it was mold related, um, and uh, they, went down that rabbit hole, and I think they've had some success. So, right, there's mold everywhere. So it's just to varying degrees and how sensitive you are to what kind of mold, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, don't put yourself in situations where there are mold, but mold at work. So, again, that's kind of um, have your workplace tested, right? Make sure your supervisor or boss be like, because that's just like a work hazard, right? Not just for yourself, but other people too. And if you do have coworkers that are continually sick, maybe there is mold toxicity or some other environmental toxin in the workplace that is causing people to call out sick more than average. It's totally
Yeah, I
possible.
think I read somewhere that most mold exposure was actually at home as opposed
Right,
to work. So that's a good place to be concerned. And I think what happens is when you start having an allergic reaction to mold or anything else, and you're more susceptible to things like sinus infections, and the infection itself may or may not be mold. It's that's infecting you, some sort of fungus that's infecting you, but you can get a viral or bacterial infection because of the constant inflammation. And of course, things like asthma are always a concern. There's a lot of people out there with asthma. The mold spores get in your lungs, cause an allergic reaction, and it's tough to clear the bronchia. So that leaves you open to pneumonia and other infections like that. So internal mold issues are kind of rare with people. Actual mold and fungal infections in the body are kind of rare with people with a strong immune system. But the irritants themselves, if you're constantly breathing them in, can cause a chronic problem all by itself. And of course, if you've got chronic inflammation for long periods of time, then your chances of getting an infection of any kind go up, whether it's a mold or a bacteria or a virus. So just the toxins from the mold themselves cause an issue. It's like you can eat food that's been well cooked, but if there's enough bacteria in it that left enough poison behind, you could still get sick, right? Even
right.
though you're not actually getting an infection because you've cooked the meat and killed off the germs. So, yeah, all of that plays into it. I know there was a article I read a long time ago. The doctor was an eye surgeon. He did a lot of eye surgeries on people. Uh, Various viral and fungal and bacterial infections in the eyes that you would cut tissue away with a laser, and he wound up with multiple infections because at the time it was thought, well, he's wearing protective gear and the laser's basically annihilating the infected in tissue, right? It's incinerating it. But there was enough live virus and fungus in the smoke from the laser that it would
Ooh.
actually pass through his mask and his face shield and all that stuff. And he eventually had multiple infections because he
I
was
thought mass worked though,
reinforced.
Tom.
Well, you know, work is I hate there's that sort of meme of they do work, they don't work, but the thing is, to what degree do they work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, if we want to be comedic about it, all right, there's some serious limitations um to what masks can do, but I can't say that they don't help at all, right?
Right.
So I mean, at least somebody's coughing with their mask on, they're not spitting in your mouth. Right?
Right.
Or sneezing with a mask on, they're not sneezing in your mouth or your eye or something. But yeah, particularly viruses tend to be so small, and they don't have to be associated with enough liquid to get caught in a mask. I know I had a family member take me to task on that, and I'm like, well, here's this. Here's this article from Journal of American Medicine that was done long time ago. Here you go.
Mhm.
Here's science. Here's hard, repeatable science, and still people lose their. How long are we into this? Oh, we're almost 10 minutes in. So people still lose their shit when you say that masks aren't fully effective. You know. So, anyways, we'll probably get taken down for me saying that, but
Congratulations, 5150 for that. 8 years completely clean. Amazing. Super amazing. That's we love to hear it. Definitely. And as far as that mold at work, that now sounds like an HR issue, an OSHA violation, possibly. Just kind of depends on where you how far you want to take it at that point. That's all personal decisions and how much of a headache you want to give yourself and how much of a headache you want to give the employer. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
so yeah, man, hit them up, man, and have them get them old test. Some of them you have to you have to mail it in to a lab, and some of them can you can get a reading right there. Like I said, they usually are like $50 to $100, something like that. So that's cheaper than a bunch of take a time off to go to the doctor and get medication and everything else. At least, even if you find out it's not, there isn't a mold there that's bothering you, at least you check something off the list, right? It's worth a peace of mind to narrow things down a little bit. So, do you want to talk about that? You want me to wait till you're done eating to talk about the BMI article, or do you want to?
No, it's fine. We could talk about it.
All right.
Um, hey, welcome to everyone to another Meat Mosaic. We will appreciate everyone that's here. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Throw uh, I don't know, how about
Lamb
a
chop,
porterhouse on that
porterhouse. All right.
on that subscribe button.
I'm down with that.
I mean the notification bell.
Porterhouse.
And throw I don't know, some lamb ribs, maybe some beef ribs on that like button. Leave us a comment. Let us know what meat you're eating this week. What are you chowing down on? Any struggles with carnivory, staying consistent? You using any of those artificial sweeteners? Come on, be honest now. Are you getting that keto ice cream from Aldi? It's springtime, it's summertime. People tend to um, be a little less compliant in the summertime. I think because people are outdoors and there's barbecues, but there's buns and there's fruits and everything's blooming. So I don't know. Do you change it up in the summer? I want to know. I am curious. And if you do, in what way do you change it up? And yeah, you'll be notified whenever one of our videos drops, when we go live. The live program may be going away. I don't know. We might go back to recorded videos. The tech issues are starting to drive us both a little nutty, but we'll see. Try to keep you guys updated. Of course, we have the Meat Mosaic Telegram group, the Meat Mosaic Facebook group, the Autistic Carnivores group on Facebook. We have me at justinalloutlife.carnivore on Instagram, Thomas A. Clark on Instagram, and all the details are below. But yeah, so I found an article that isn't too terribly surprising. The quote unquote inaccuracy of BMI. This is something that's been argued for quite some time. It's not anything really particularly new if you've been in the health and fitness space for a while. Um, I think I think the BMI discussion and the calorie discussion are both very relevant, and you can find people arguing on both sides. And I think talking calories can be useful, just like I think talking BMI can be useful, but it might wash out when it comes down to the individual. That's kind of my starting thought on it. Um, what about you, Tom?
Yeah, I think what's for one, it's part of the standard of care, right? So, you know, just about every medical institution will generate a body mass index. We should probably explain the terminology, right? BMI stands for body mass index, right?
Mhm.
And so there's a sort of scale what they project to be a healthy relationship between height to weight, particularly, right? That's what it's
Mhm.
based on.
Right.
So, just like calories, it's kind of the established established sort of measurement, however flawed it is, So it's important to keep in mind that, you could have somebody that has a good BMI but is very unhealthy, right?
Mm,
So, the classic is a sort of tofu person who's perhaps got a lot of visceral fat, but outwardly doesn't appear to be obese, right? So you look at their weight's not particularly high, but the fat that they do have is stored in a very unhealthy place, and so they tend to be sickly. And of course, there's always some swap between muscle mass and fat, right? So I like to talk about things in terms of composition, right? And composition is primarily, well, what you can alter is primarily how much muscle mass you have versus how much adipose tissue or body fat you have, right? So, if you take somebody who's got a lot of muscle on them, they're going to weigh more because muscle is denser than fat. And so something like that could throw off a BMI, right? Because they're going to hit that scale and their weight on the scale is going to be compared to their height, right? On the other hand, you could have somebody with very little muscle mass, but just enough fat to get them in the zone on a BMI scale, and they could be very unhealthy, even though they don't weigh that much, right?
right.
So there's it's another imperfect sort of unit of measure. And I think the article you posted, did you bring up were you going to bring up the article?
Yeah, yeah, I've got the article. I don't know if you want me to share it or just read a couple portions from it.
Yeah, why don't you just put it up on the screen? I'll drop the link. I dropped it in the Facebook group. I'll drop it in the Telegram group as well for kids at home following along. Let's see. I just want to say hi to Raymond while you're picking it up. What's up, Raymond? It's a big BBB and E month with a bunch of YouTube channels. Help me out. What's that mean? BBB.
Bacon, beef, boobs, and butt. No, I don't think that's right. Maybe pork butt.
I'm sure Raymond will fill us in. Let us know what that's all about.
So, I guess originally, or maybe not originally, but BMI has been used as a way to predict a person's cardiovascular risk. Um, the thoughts being that the higher your BMI or the more obese you are, the higher your chance of risk of having a cardiovascular event, right? Whether it be stroke, heart attack, etc. Um, which I mean, makes sense. Even in our world, that kind of makes sense because if a person's BMI is that out of range, they probably do have a lot of the Randall cycle going on and systemic inflammation in the heart. Um, so it makes sense even without them going that deep into it. But this new study indicates that measuring the ratio of the waist to the height of patients rather than looking at their BMI shows that the supposed survival advantage for people with a BMI of 25 kg M2 or more disappears. I'm not quite sure what the 25 kg M2 is. I haven't seen a BMI written that way. Tom, do you know the formula there?
That's 25 kilograms to meter
Yes.
squared.
Meter squared, right. Yeah. Or more disappears. This suggests that indices that don't include weight, such as waist to height ratio, have clarified the true relationship between body fat and patient outcomes. So basically, it should be, I forgot the weight to height ratio parameters though. Do you remember that one, Tom? Do you remember how
Off
it's
the top
supposed
of
to?
my head, no.
Yeah. Isn't it you should be under one inch or whatever? Something like that.
I don't know. We can look it up, but I
Yeah.
don't know.
But that's it seems to be a better signifier. Basically, don't be as wide as you are tall. Basically, um, These findings are significant because they challenge the notion that being overweight or obese can benefit individuals with heart failure. In fact, the study suggests that excess body weight is associated with worse outcomes. No surprise there. This is an important message for healthcare professionals and individuals with heart failure, as it underscores the importance of maintaining a healthy weight and reduces excess body fat. So I guess there was some data going around that um, having heart failure being a little bit on the bigger side apparently was being deemed a protective factor, which I don't know how bad science that was, but that doesn't sound right to me. The bigger you are, the more difficult your heart has a hard time pumping that blood around your whole body, right?
Right. Well, typically heart failure is associated with blockage in the arterial arteries in the coronary arteries. Sorry. So, you know, I mean, there are other forms of heart failure, right?
Mm,
But the primary one is atherosclerosis that builds up and occludes the passageway on the high pressure side of the heart, right? The left side. So, um, they don't really parse that out in this explanation, which is another reason why all these articles are so confusing, right?
right,
Because it's like, are you associating a person's size with blockage? Because that would be my first question, right?
right.
And of course, I'm of the opinion that, like, if you really want to know how much blockage you get, go get a CAC score, which is a coronary artery calcium scan, right?
Hmm.
So let me go over to Raymond's comments. He says, Dr. Baker is considered obese according to his BMI. Well, there you go. As with Dr. Baker, he had the CAC scan done and he had a score of 0. So there was no calcified plaque in his arteries that could be measured, right? And of course, we know people that have scores well above 0, like 600, 1500, and so on and so forth, right? And they're still alive and kicking. So there's a big difference there. And that's another reason why I would say it's one thing to look at a BMI and go, oh, you're unhealthy. And then you trace it back and say, well, you're more likely to have heart failure. And I was like, okay, what kind of heart failure are you talking about? It's just like, you're saying the heart's just wearing out because the person's too big for the heart. But of course, hearts get bigger, so
Mm,
there's a limit to that. But hearts do get larger. Um, they're larger and larger people for obvious reasons, right? The
mm.
larger the mammal, typically the larger the heart. It's just how it works. It's not like you're born with a certain size heart, right?
Which is why you're so kind, Tom.
That's what I didn't hear what you said.
Why you are so kind. You have a big heart.
Oh, big
Uh,
guy, big heart.
yeah.
So, yeah, I'd like to point out too. You look at some of Dr. Baker's lab work; his glucose was a little high. People are like, "Oh, he's pre-diabetic," but it's like you work out like an animal, and guess what? When you're in recovery, your glucose goes up. Imagine that. And then that again is repeatable science. And when you take stuff like this out of context and you're not very specific, same thing. His testosterone. Everybody's, oh, his testosterone's too low. Blah 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 blah. And it's like the dude's jacked. He's strong as f. He's healthy as could be. So how high does your testosterone level need to be? And again, they don't test for things like androgen receptors, right? So the higher your androgen receptor count is, the less testosterone you need. It's the same relationship. I was trying to explain that relationship between vitamin C and glucose, how they both compete for the GLUT4 transporter. When you've got a bunch of glucose swimming around, the vitamin C doesn't get transported, right? So then you need higher and higher levels of vitamin C in your system in order to compete with the glucose, right?
Right.
Same thing. You don't have enough receptors. Insulin receptors are variable in cells. When you have a high glucose situation and the you can't produce enough insulin to overcome all the extra sugar you ate, then some of the cells will actually get more insulin receptors on them to force more sugar out of the blood and into the cells. Blah blah blah. So there's all these variables in there that really aren't accounted for. And real quick, Raymond clarified that the BBB and E is beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. All right.
There you
I
go.
like the way you think, Raymond.
We certainly can
Just
get
pointing it
on
out.
board with the BBBBB. There just needs to be a Q at the end of it because we know you're going to be smoking some of that beef and barbecuing some of that beef.
So going to be our
For sure.
symbol for barbecue is just a Q.
Yeah.
Throw it on the Q.
Throw it on the Q.
Spark
There
up
you
the
go.
Q.
Yeah.
Heat that meat.
Heat the meat.
Throw that ham in a firing pan.
Ugh. Ham in a well, I don't know. Actually, ham in a frying pan is actually pretty good. So never mind, it's fine.
Gonna grill some pork chops.
Grill some pork chops.
Sear
Done
a
it.
porterhouse.
There you go. So, in conclusion, the new study challenges the so called obesity paradox in heart failure and provides valuable insights into the relationship between obesity, body fat, and patient outcomes. Now, I really wish they would obesity, body fat, and muscle mass because we know how protective having a good amount of muscle on your body is. It highlights the importance of using different measures to assess body size and proportions and underscores the importance of maintaining a healthy weight and reducing excessive body fat. These findings have significant implications for the prevention and management of heart failure and for public health policies aimed at reducing the prevalence of obesity. I did look up what the weight to height ratio was. So, the weight to height ratio, or WTHR, is the tool used to predict the risk of heart disease and diabetes and overall mortality more effectively. To calculate your waist to height ratio, a person should divide their waist size by their height, and if the result is zero point 0.5 or less, they are likely to have a moderate weight. A healthy weight to heart weight to height ratio should be around 10 to 20% heavier for males at similar heights as females, and 2.66 inches divided by pounds, or 2.85 pounds depending on height. However, this value may vary depending on individual factors such as body frame size.
Yeah. I'll harken back to a story I mentioned before. I went to some sort of health class through my healthcare provider, and the lady that was teaching it was this very slender Asian lady. I think she's probably a nutritionist or something like that. And she was talking about your wrist size, right? And she goes like this, and she's got, oh, my video's lagging, but she wraps her fingers around her wrist, and she's got like extra fingers sticking off the side, like she could completely wrap her her thumb and her index finger around her wrist, no problem, right? And they overlapped, and I was like, "Listen, lady, my hands are bigger than yours, and I can't even come close to going around my wrist." So she's like, "Yeah, well," and so right there, that was like a point she made in talking about this, because the wrist measurement was one of the things. Wrist measurements typically don't change, right?
Mhm,
But they're an indication of, how big your bones are, really, right? So,
mhm,
so a lot of times it's like wrist and ankle, provided you don't have like edema or something, you can usually get a good measurement around the ankle as well. So yeah, so there's a massive difference in people's skeletons. Some
right.
people just have a dainty frame. I mean, most of the people in particularly my mom's side of the family, I don't know so much about my dad's side of the family. They all have big shoulders and big hips and big chests, just great big rib cages, So
Mhm.
so I know every time I want to watch, I have to go try and find a bigger wristband. Like, I can't just walk in a store and buy a whole watch with a wristband that's big enough. Speaking of which, You know what I got, Justin? I don't know if I told you.
I don't think you told me. Why don't you share with the class?
Yeah, so what I got was my friend Marissa, you met Marissa, right?
Mm.
That's a yes.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah,
correct.
we went out to eat. So
Mm.
anyways, she got me one of those ancestry DNA test kits.
Oh yeah, right.
So I sent it in
Oh wow.
and just got the
Jeff
results.
Bezos has your data. Let me
Jeff,
guess, you're 98% black.
a little less than that. So anyways, it came back, no surprise. 46%, yeah, 46% southeastern central. What country? Take a wild
uh,
flaming guess.
China.
No, a little more west.
You know me, I don't know my geography.
You don't know
Um,
where the hell I'm from? Jesus, we've talked about
you're
this like,
from the Nordic, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
The
Denmark.
Nordic, huh? Did you
I'm
say
only.
Denmark?
I did say Denmark.
God damn. How hard can it be? Do you need help?
I do.
My geographically impaired friend.
Yes, very much so.
Southeastern, comma, central, and northern Norway,
Ah, of course, Norway.
but also southern Hedmark, eastern uh, Akershus, southern Opland,
Mm. Those are like the kings, right?
southeastern
Essex.
Hedmark, southeastern Hedmark, eastern Norway, and Opland. So that's 46%. And then there's a 30%, 36% that's not super distinct. It just says England and Northwestern Europe.
Hmm.
And then 7% Sweden, Denmark, 5% Wales, 4% Ireland, and 2% Finland. You're not done with your Wendy's yet? What the hell, dude?
No,
Dude, we
I
started eating before we started this recording. We've already been recording for 32 minutes and you're not done eating?
I've been taking breaks. I had to read an article. I do
You
research.
you usually inhale food like a hurricane.
I'm trying to be
That's what I'm
a
just gonna call
regular
you from
human
now
being.
on. The hurricane,
The hurricane, the meat hurricane.
meat hurricane.
There you go. Yeah, so those people are the Vikings where you come from are quite tall compared to my wife from Asia and me from South America, Mexico.
And
A
aren't you
little
part
bit
German?
different and part German. Yeah.
It's interesting. I don't have any German.
It's kind of interesting actually.
Yeah, because I kind of assumed there'd be some in there, but
Hmm.
nada. So,
So so I calculated my height to weight ratio and it's zero
mhm.
point 0.4. Technically 0.5 carry the 6. So per damn near like perfect or whatever. Should be zero point 0.5 or less. Mine's 0.46 and some other numbers too. 0.462. So I'm right where I should be, more or less.
Oh, I see Raymond's got the same issue as me. He says he has to add links when he buys a watch too. His wrist is over 8 inches. I don't have something to measure my wrist handy, but I'll measure it. And then, of course, he guessed Scandinavia, of course.
Hmm.
Scandinavia being, Norway, Sweden, Finland, and if we have to, include Denmark. Silly Swedes and the silly Danes. I guess it can't be too hard on them since I got a little bit of them in me.
There you go. Windmills and clog shoes. Got to do it now.
I mean, picking on Swedes is kind of my part-time hobby. It's funny because I was thinking where I was hearing about racial stuff. I was talking about people. We just went through that Asian hate thing, and then um, it always seems like all white people kind of like get lumped together,
Mhm.
but you know, nobody I know wants to be associated with the French, right? And there's no pure French bloodline. I mean, they didn't even they had like 100 different languages just 100 years ago in France, right? The only people that
Mhm.
spoke French were the people who lived around Paris. They didn't, anybody who didn't live in Paris, they didn't even want to consider French. People were still writing novels and getting awards, who lived in France and spoke languages that had been there for hundreds of years that are now languages that have gone extinct in the last 100 years, right?
Mhm.
And of course, Normandy was occupied by Northmen, Scandinavians. So places like that have a lot of traffic, that there's no pure bloodline there. So,
Right.
which of course well, the way I say it, there is no pure bloodline of anything. We're all hybrids from a vast gene pool. As much as we want to identify with some sort of uh, particular ethnicity or whatever, but I don't know if non non-Caucasian centric cultures realize that all white people don't consider themselves the same kind of white. And it has nothing to do with what neighborhood you live in. We have distinct subcultures.
Mhm.
I mean, do you know anybody that lived in a Leave It to Beaver house?
No.
Do you know anybody who's Irish who won't tell you they're Irish like every day?
No.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, I have a fun factoid for you.
Yeah.
So the Egyptians didn't have a word for blue. Like there's no blue in their lexicon. So it's the green Euphrates in Egyptian.
Well, particularly in the Latin languages, they use azul, right, for blue,
Mhm. Mhm.
and that actually comes from the name of lapis lazuli, right, which is a blue stone.
Mhm.
And I want to say it was Aristotle or something, one of the famous philosophers in his writings. They were there. I saw a discussion about that too. They didn't have a word for blue either. And you think blue because we live under a blue sky, like how would there not be a name for blue, right? You
Mhm.
see blue water frequently, you see a blue sky, you know, and maybe it's kind of rare. Maybe there aren't a lot of blue flowers, maybe there aren't a lot of blue birds, but you would think there'd be enough that they would have a word for it. But you're right, it's the color blue. The name for the color blue is relatively recent sort of development, right?
Yeah.
Crazy, crazy.
But you know what people did have before knowing about the color blue or having a word for it?
What
They
did
were
they?
eating meat.
For sure. So
The
I was
eating of meat produces the names of colors. I mean, precurses the names of colors.
I had a lengthy discussion online with a fella. I think it started in the Meat Mosaic group, but the guy sent me a message,
Mhm.
and his whole thing was he thinks eating raw meat is super dangerous, right?
Oh.
And he's a scientist of note. He works on stuff like this for a living, right? In a
Uh-huh.
laboratory. So,
Huh.
anyways, the conversation kind of drifted around from here and there, but he was trying to correct me on my interpretation of um, of evolution and stuff like that. And it got very confusing because I don't think he quite is quite catching on to what I was saying.
Mm,
But anyways, uh, he pointed out that fishbone, the fish teeth paper. You know, they found some burnt fish teeth that are about 780,000 years old, right? And that's the oldest thing we have that is any sort of evidence that people were cooking meat.
mhm.
But we don't really know that they found these burnt fish teeth because the people had cooked the fish. I mean, that's one certainly one strong possibility, right?
Can I just take 1 second to say that there's important battles in history that we
Mhm.
don't exactly know where they took place. That's
Right.
how bad the archaeology is. And it's not the scientist's fault. It's just because you find a bunch of spearheads somewhere doesn't mean that X big battle took place there. Might be nearby, but it also could have been a storage place for spearheads, could have been a training ground, could have been a completely different battle that we haven't heard about. So I just wanted to take a minute just to say how difficult it is to really trace these things in the past. And these are things that have been written down. So things that have happened in the last 5,000 years. There's the entire kingdom of well, you could call him an emperor in the modern context of Sargon of Akkad, which is essentially the first emperor. We don't know where his city was. We don't know. We somewhere in Iraq, but we actually have no idea where his empire was. We know the region, but we don't know his main city. So it's just
Oh yeah, so like
crazy,
the city of Troy, right?
right?
Everybody thought it was mythological for a long time. And it was, maybe 100 years ago, somebody's like, yeah, I think I found it. And part of the problem is one city gets built on top of another,
Right.
right? We've heard this time and time again. Even like, um, you mentioned Egypt. So some of the great monuments that are known in Egypt are actually built on top of previous monuments. And of course, the question is always, why is the stuff underneath higher quality, right? How did people farther back how are they better at carving stone, let's say? So, but even in Mesoamerica, one pyramid was built on top of another. Somebody built a pyramid, and somebody comes along and builds a bigger one right on top of it. And this is particularly common in ritual sites. And this is
Mm,
one of the things the gentleman I was discussing things with. I said, they could have been burning the fish in some sort of offering. And he's like, oh no, no, nobody did that long ago. But we know that they did, and that's
mm,
because you got habituation sites where people lived on and on over and over again, sometimes continuously, sometimes not continuously, but they get repopulated. There's also these ritual sites where entirely different people would come and make sacrifices. And oftentimes, one of the things they sacrifice were things like arrowheads. They would throw them into the fire or spearheads, but also, animal sacrifices and stuff like that. So, I mean, that could be an explanation. I mean, let's say that these these people had a garbage pit and they had some stinky fish heads and they threw them in the fire pit, right?
uh-huh.
Because we know people eat raw fish all the time, right?
Right. Yeah.
And that's a tradition that goes back to prehistory unbroken, right? So
Right.
it could be that people had fire 780,000 years ago and they were cooking meat, but that's just one potential piece of evidence that it was happening, right? And the thing is, we have literally millions and millions of habituation sites where people lived, and archaeologists go digging through their campfires and their trash pits, and you know up until recently the sort of accepted date for the control of fire was like 100 to 140,000 years ago.
Mm,
And then people have been kind of suggesting maybe it was 200,000 years ago. And then there's a cave in Israel where they're like, yeah, man, it looks like it might be 300,000 years ago, maybe 400,000 years ago. And it's possible that people had fire, but you got to wonder, just because they had fire doesn't mean they started cooking food right away. And then if you had somebody in Israel and that some community there that was had control of fire, how long did it take to spread to other communities, right? How long does it take? How many generations does it take before the use of it's widespread? And then where's the evidence, right? Because one of the things that persists over time is like when people burn wood and stuff like that, the charcoal that gets buried lasts a long time, right?
Hmm.
It can last millions of years, right? So where's the rest of the evidence that people were cooking meat? And my argument, of course, is that, you know, we know during the Ice Age we had people following around woolly mammoths and mastodons and eating them, and they left habituation sites and even structures, homes that they built from mammoth bones, but there's no sign of them cooking the meat. And there's also no sign of any vegetation in the eat. So imagine during the Ice Age, what are you going to find around to eat besides animals, right?
Hmm.
Most plants, 99% of all plants are toxic to human beings. Now you're in an ice age. What are you going to eat? And everybody jumps right back to like, oh, we were primates swinging in the trees eating fruit. And then we kind of started sort of eating meat. It's like, well, is that really how it happened? Right?
Right.
What do you think?
Well, I just wanted to make a comment about how just logically how we would have come across cooked meat, because there's near less than zero chance that we would have just like, hey, here's some meat, here's some fire. Let's try to throw this meat in the fire. Because why?
Right.
Why? Well, be like, this is only going to dry it out and ruin it. It's like fire's destructive. You're scared of fire, right? Like for millions of years, it was fire bad, fire scary. You might throw the occasional virgin into a fire pit to keep the sun god happy, but that was pretty much it. Um, so it had to have. I always think these things had to have happened accidentally before they happened purposefully. So just by chance, a first forest fire charred some animal. We came by as scavengers, started munching on it. Probably the first couple bites tasted terrible because it was all like charred and weird and dry, right? But then maybe underneath it tasted pretty good, you know. And let's not forget that probably the way that fire started was that a strike of lightning or something, and some monkey or primate or pre-hominid grabs a stick that's on fire and lights other sticks, right? And maybe they were able to be a little extra safe that night because of the fire, because animals have an even more natural disdain for fire. They'll stay away from smoke and fire.
Yeah,
So,
I'm pretty sure a monkey wouldn't go anywhere near a burning stick, but you never know.
well, maybe a monkey on a mushroom. He thought it was a talking bush.
Perhaps.
Perhaps. Um, and so yeah, I mean, coming across cooked meat probably may would have, but that still would have taken quite a long time to um, put those pieces together, and then coming up with, because there is that danger zone of if you cook it too much you ruin it, as in like the flavor, right? It gets worse tasting than raw meat. And if you don't cook it enough, then you actually do increase your chance of getting parasites or some kind of bacteria from it, right? So there's like that zone, and it probably took forever to find that zone. And not to mention each of the animals, like we don't know what temperature, maybe we do, you would cook a mammoth for medium rare, or rare,
Just lightly seared.
lightly seared. Yeah.
Well, that was another discussion that came up because we talked about searing. And I mentioned that somewhere along the way that raw meat is slightly more nutritious than cooked meat, and that cooking it denatures the proteins or the amino acids and alters the fats, and he got all sciencey like, oh, in order to break it down, it's got to be at such a temperature and blah 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 blah. But I'm thinking when you sear a piece of meat, the exterior is exposed to more intense heat, right?
Mm.
And you don't necessarily have to cook it very long. it's definitely carbonizing, right? That's what's going on,
Mm.
glycating, right? That's how you get that crust on the outside. But that was completely glossed over. And of course, I threw in the isotope studies, the stable isotope studies, and he never touched that with a 10-foot pole. So, anyways, yeah, we were clearly eating a lot of meat before there's any proof of fire. And like you said, I mean, those burnt fish teeth, maybe that was the result of a lightning strike, right?
Mm. Right.
Fucking your little village gets burned down by a lightning strike, right? It wouldn't be the first time.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So anyways, yeah, I agree that there's risk. The real risk of eating raw meat is contamination. Things like poultry and duck. Chickens and ducks. They're almost 100% get contaminated when they're being slaughtered, particularly in a factory. Right? It has to be done very
Mm.
carefully by an individual. It's like places like Japan, they still serve raw chicken. But if you ever try to eat raw chicken, it's usually tougher than hell anyway. It's like, who wants to eat it, right?
Right.
Um, Whereas beef is less likely to be contaminated unless it's ground.
Mm.
We've talked about this a million times. It's not like I'm telling people to eat raw meat, but I want people I eat raw meat and enjoy it. I know there's a risk involved, and lots of other people eat raw meat. Plenty of restaurants serve raw meat, right? Including ground beef, right?
Right.
Well, I mean, everybody around the world eats sushi, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, beef, and of course, a lot of places serve raw beef, and of course, wild game is a lot more risky. I wouldn't eat raw wild game myself, but
Or you could be like a Asa and have a raw squirrel brain. There you go.
yeah, you could. I mean, people do eat raw wild animals all the time.
Mm.
Well, wild animals eat raw wild animals all the time. And, I mentioned the stomach pH, and he's like, oh, well, it doesn't kill all the bacteria. And I'm like, no, it lowers the bacteria load, though, right?
Mm. Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, everything is infested with bacteria and viruses and funguses all the time, including our brains. We can only tolerate certain organisms living in our brains, right?
Right. Yeah. Stay away from that escargot.
Yeah, I've only had escargot a couple times. I didn't care for it. It's a lot of work. It's messy, and I didn't think it tasted that good. Same thing with like frog legs, all the weird stuff. The reason why they don't serve it in most places is because it doesn't taste so good.
And it's a pain in the ass. Well, and you have to have the right snails for it. Otherwise, you will get brain worms.
Yeah, you could get brainworms or something, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think most of the escargot that's served in restaurants, those aren't like wild snails. They're usually,
Right.
you know, they're bred in captivity. They're they're selected and sterilized livestock. So
Right.
yeah.
Interesting, little bit of a reaction story. So my wife, so everyone knows that we've had this weird like supply chain issues since the pestilence and all that, and some other issues, right? And so I had bought conventional eggs, and I've been obsessed with carnivore pancakes. And so I was making like stacks of them, like just about every morning, like a madman. And Sarah was getting severely itchy at night, like really bad itchy, to where
Hmm.
she couldn't like sleep, just scratching all night long. And I was like, did she develop an egg allergy? Did she have an underlying one and just overdid it? Or is it because I was like, you know what? It might be the conventional eggs. So I made a stack yesterday with eggs from my aunt's house, the farm eggs. Um, she scratched a little bit, but not nearly as bad as with the conventional eggs. I
Hmm.
was fine, surprisingly, because I'm usually the sensitive one to things. But she just like scratching fits, like itching fits. So just something interesting. I'm an empiricist, so I'll always go with the data, you know? Um, Not that I don't believe people when they say, "Hey, eating conventional meat or conventional eggs gives me to have a react." I know there's people that react to conventional food, but I'm also not going to be as extreme as everything Everything needs to be grass fed organic. I just, Aristotelian mean. And I'm the same way with raw. I think they raw and cooked have risks and benefits, but I think for the most part, most healthy people can handle both and a mix of both, you know. And it's more about safe handling practice, and know what you're doing.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, by the way, I tried your egg and cream cheese waffle.
Uh-huh.
The way I did it, you said like an ounce of cream cheese for per egg,
Yeah.
and it didn't actually measure it by fluid volume or weight. I wasn't even sure
Right.
which one you meant because I didn't ask. But I had beat some eggs, and then I warmed some cream cheese in the microwave, and I put one like heaping tablespoon per egg in there, and it
Uh-huh.
came out really nice. It
Uh-huh.
is really like puffed up.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it had a nice texture and everything. It kind of tastes like a plain omelet a little bit, but
Hmm.
of course it's a little it's a little
Fluffier,
creamier because it's
creamier.
got yeah. So and then I'd also tried Janice is telling me she used egg whites in the waffle iron.
Mm,
So I had some egg whites. I think she said she put a little baking powder in there. So I tried a
yeah.
little baking powder and tried it, and that worked well too. And then I added some bacon, crumbled bacon to it.
Uh,
That was pretty nice. The cream cheese, of course, made it more creamy for sure.
mm,
A little softer. The straight egg white was um a little bit leathery.
right.
And then I also tried it with just whole eggs with some ground sausage in it.
Mm, mm,
Yeah, so I don't have a great waffle iron. It makes those little tiny round, like 2-inch ones.
uh-huh.
So they're kind of not great waffles. They're okay if you want to pick one up and eat it. But yeah, it's interesting. You can just put egg in a waffle iron. It's funny because I was at Goodwill yesterday dropping off some stuff, and this other lady was bringing. She had a waffle iron in the box, like a big waffle iron, and I was like, "Hey, what do you want for that?"
Uh-huh.
I think I'll just go back and buy it so I can try a bigger waffle.
There you go. Yeah, I haven't tried this recipe with a waffle iron yet. You know, have to see. It's not bad so far. Just throw in a little bit of vanilla extract, some cinnamon.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, and it
I
comes
think you
out
did
really
mention
nice.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost, I mean, I would like to get it to where it's like almost like a churro.
Almost like a
Like,
churro.
could you imagine carnivore churros? Like how amazing that would be?
Just a egg batter stick covered in
Yeah.
sugar and cinnamon.
Yeah.
Is that what you're going for?
Yeah, except we'd have to cover it in like stevia and like monk fruit or something.
You can have your stevia.
For like
It
keto churros or something. I just
turns my
feel like
stomach thinking about stevia. It's
that's
nasty.
a I love stevia.
That's the kind of
I
thing
don't think it loves
I'd give
me.
my enemy. Here, have some stevia. Just wreck your taste buds on this stuff.
I don't, dude. I don't know. I like all the sugar alcohols. None of them really. I don't think any of them taste bad. I don't like sucralose though. To me, sucralose just is that weird, overly processed sweet taste to it.
I'm not even sure I know what it tastes like.
Oh, you would know if you had sucralose.
I've seen it
It's
listed as an ingredient, but I've never like tried it, worked with it. So
Yeah, I don't know. My aunt had like some keto yogurt that had sucralose in it, and it tasted like birthday cake, but like in a bad way. It was just
huh.
like too sweet, but not sugary sweet. Just just a really weird sweet. My opinion: use them sparingly if you can. With
Is
the sugar. So
sucralose like
Raymond,
the sweetener you could buy and add to food, or does it just come as an ingredient?
both.
That's-
So
You could
yeah, you
buy it.
can buy straight sucralose.
Huh.
It's the yellow package. at like a coffee shop or Denny's or
So it's
whatever.
like Splenda.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Splenda, sucralose.
I
Yeah,
didn't realize that was it. Isn't that the one that's
yeah,
made from bananas?
yeah. I think so. Yeah.
Huh. So I've had Splenda back in the day. I didn't particularly care for it, but it was
Stevia.
better than stevia. And what's the one that came in the red packet? The old sweetener.
Oh, the sweet and low or whatever.
Yeah, the bitter one.
The
Is it
bitter one.
aspartame? I think that's
Yeah, that they
aspartame.
think that's aspartame. Yeah.
Yeah, that's nasty too. I don't know how people fall for that. It's disgusting.
Well, that's in like the zero sugar. I don't know. For some reason, they're really, it's horrible. But like Coke Zero, that Dr. Pepper Zero with cherry, they're doing some horrible. I'm sure it'll turn your insides to embalming fluid, but they're getting these tastes down with this chemical concoctions.
I still have
Yeah.
some of that diet soda you left in my house though. Kind of tan colored one. Was that a cherry
That's
vanilla
that's
Coke or something?
vanilla Coke Zero.
Huh. I pawned a couple of them off on Marissa, and then after she wanted some more, she politely declined. I also tried to feed her my first batch of chaffles, the
Uh-huh.
the egg white ones with the bacon in it. She had like
Uh-huh.
one bite, and she's like, that's interesting." I said, "What does it need? What does it need?" She's like, "Cheese. I'm thinking a nice Gruyere, but I haven't been to the store to buy any Gruyere. Maybe I'll fake her out with a little bit of. We both like that. What's that soft white cheese that one I was buying? Shit,
Um,
forgot it now.
crap, I just totally slipped me now. But
Yeah,
no,
it
that
just
one's
slipped me
good.
too.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, I mean they do still spike insulin. There's still risks to it. I don't think it's like a cardiovascular risk and stuff like that if you're metabolically, well and all that good stuff. But I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say it's good for you or necessary because it is not. It is playing with fire, depending on who you are. Um, and yeah, just be careful with it. Just know that you're dealing with a sweetener and your body's going to react to it similarly, even without the spiking of the sugar. And there isn't, I mean, I think stevia, is it stevia or the other one? What's the other? Or erythritol, I
Uh-huh.
think has research going back to like 1890 or so when it was like first discovered. So there's some pretty different, decent research on these sugar alcohols
Yeah,
for
and you gotta
better.
wonder, like, there are people consuming them in higher concentrations now because there's more and more people that are getting off real sugar. Like, that's what I was wondering is like, does the context change?
Oh yeah, I'm sure it does. I mean, the whole dose makes the poison, right?
Yeah, and Raymond brings up a good point. Like, a lot of people, they can't just moderate. They have to abstain. So if they eat something sweet, then they wind up eating real sugar. So we got to be mindful of those folks as well. Some people, it's like anything. Some people can have one drink, some people got to have them all, you know.
Right.
The man takes a
And
drink, the drink takes a drink, then the drink takes the man, or the girl takes the girls too.
and I would say that I think a struggle that people have is when they're in a bind that honey versus sugar alcohols, what to do in that situation. And it's hard for me to say which one is worse because I think it may that depend on the individual. I react to honey. Um, I suppose there's the flawed naturalistic argument that good sourced honey is more natural than the sugar alcohols. But the fructose might be more damaging, but I don't know. And I don't know if anyone knows.
And that's
I
got to
think
be
just,
the quantity, right?
yeah, I mean, well, I'm thinking like I'm trying to compare apples to apples. So,
Sure.
like a teaspoon of honey versus a teaspoon of erythritol or something, or
Yeah, I'm just
stevia.
thinking like how much you're going to eat in a day or a week, right?
Right.
because I mean, fructose. The biggest thing I see with fructose is if you're consuming it regularly is probably that it's going to prevent um your collagen from being repaired, right?
Mm.
And the second thing is, of course, it's got a fair amount of fructose. Yeah, honey's got a fair amount of fructose in it, so that's got to go to the liver to be processed, and it's more likely to wind up as visceral fat, right?
Yeah, I just don't know if we have what because there's tons of research on honey, but these newer concoctions, yeah, there's a good amount of research, but we don't really have long-term effect data
Right.
versus honey. So
Maybe
is the
maybe that's why
devil
you. I think stevia is why you keep freezing.
or is it like a go with the devil, right? I don't know. You know the
Yeah,
kind of trouble you're in for. So it's like, okay, I'm having honey. Maybe I should get some more crunchy bits of meat. Make sure I eat that fat and stuff like that on my next steak
yeah.
later on this afternoon or evening. I don't know, Whereas with stevia, I don't know what the negative effects are necessarily.
Wasn't stevia originally cultivated for birth control?
Right. Yeah, they're right. Yeah. So there
So
might be
maybe it causes fertility issues.
maybe.
I don't know. That'd be an
But like
interesting.
monk fruit, I mean, right,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's the known versus the unknown. So I just think if you have to do it, I mean table sugar versus honey versus these supplement uh zero sugars. I think it really just depends in context
So
and who you are.
this conversation kind of all got started when I was talking about making the waffles.
Right.
My assumption was we were making waffles that weren't sweet
Right. I mean that's
because
obviously the best.
I bought the monk fruit and I think erythritol when you were coming out because we were gonna cook some stuff
Uh-huh.
and we never had time, so it's still sitting in the cupboard, right?
There you go.
And, when it comes to honey, see, I could see honey like maybe you put it in your coffee or something to sweeten it, or I'm used to having like honey on bread with butter or something like that before carnivore, but I
Uh-huh.
never really looked at it and went, "Oh, this would be great to put in, I don't know, carnivore ice cream or waffles or something like that," right? That's like I'm guess it would work, but to me, it's like I don't know. Would it taste that good? I don't know.
It's okay. I mean, I've had them with a bit of honey on them,
Hmm.
and it's good. It's sweet. Um, I prefer maple syrup, and I've got the Chalk Zero maple syrup, which goes really well on it.
Chalk zero.
Chalk Zero. They're a company that make zero carb like sweeteners or whatever.
Huh.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, that one's really good. I tried mixing the Chalk Zero chocolate fudge in the batter. It did not work. Like it just did not take like chocolate at all. So that kind of was disappointing.
Yeah, I'll get back to Raymond here real quick. He was suggesting maybe I was trying to think of brie, and wasn't I actually do have brie? I still have that wheel of brie I bought when you were here. I should probably eat that. Thanks for reminding me, Raymond. Hey, Raymond, you want to come over and have some brie? But the cheese I was trying to think of was Havarti.
Oh, Havarti. Yeah,
I
Havarti's
actually like the
amazing.
Havarti a little more than the brie. The brie's pretty awesome if you warm it up, and I'll tell you, you get some warm brie, and what you do is you dip your jerky in it. That's good. That's a quality meal right there. Brie and jerky. Good. I'm gonna try brie on a steak next, for sure.
Mm. I don't know, too sour for me. I could never really get into brie. I have to be in the
Sour.
right mood for brie.
Sour. I
To
don't
me,
think it's
brie always tastes sour.
uh, maybe that's the thing. This is how we perceive taste. Because like I think stevia is nasty, and it's like it's so popular. I'm like, I don't know how people tolerate it. It's just got to be, how our taste buds are wired or something.
Yeah, I don't know. One of us was nursed too much, the other not nursed enough. Who knows?
Dude, I was suckled on goat milk.
I think I was suckled on processed soy, whatever.
Oh, that explains a lot.
Right? Doesn't it? Yeah. Anyway.
I wonder if there's any scientific data that associates soy-based baby formula with androgyny.
Yeah, probably.
That explains a whole generation right there.
Right? Yeah.
Uh, Definitely getting banned for that.
Well, I believe we could wrap it up. But Raymond, any more questions about the fake sugars, as you call it? I don't know. That's kind of my opinions on it. Best to avoid,
Hey,
but
and Vanessa, if you're still out there, join the join the Telegram group, Meat Mosaic Telegram group, and or the Meat Mosaic Facebook group, and at least me and you and Raymond can meet up sometime, get some burgers. We'll
there
have
you
a
go.
mini meetup. Maybe we'll find somebody else in the neighborhood. So that'd be fun. Even if we just go hit in and out, that'd be a good time. And then we can taunt everybody else who's not here.
In and out's always a good time. I
Yeah.
only had it 4 times in a week. That week I was out. Was it 4 times? I think it was 4 times.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, yeah. Or, shoot me a message. I'm in contact with Raymond. That's easy.
Mm.
But yeah, leave us a message. Hit me up on Facebook if you got Facebook Messenger or whatever. We'll just one of these weekends, we'll just go have some burgers. That'd be a good time. So, and anybody else that's in Southern California, let's make it easy peasy. Raymond's ready. Yeah, Raymond. I don't know. You and I got no excuse. We could have had a bunch of burgers by now. At least when you're not out at the concerts out of town. But yeah, we should do it. So,
There you go.
all right, man. Well, we'll wrap it up. So, everybody out there, thanks for coming.
Thanks for
Leave us your
coming.
comments. Maybe you got some comment about BMI. I already did that one video. I was talking about the perfect body type. We were talking about, particularly people who are dedicated to a particular sport. That's really going to dictate things like BMI, right? You got
Mhm.
marathon runners, ultra marathon runners, cyclists, and then you got strong men, at the other end. There's no strong man with a with a good BMI, right?
Right.
Like Dr. Baker is a good example. Crazy strong man. So,
Right.
anyways, yeah, leave us some comments and you know, hit us up if you want to do a meetup. Let us know if there's some topic that's on your mind. You don't have to wait till the thing starts to get rolling. We could do a whole hour if one of you guys want to come on.
Hmm.
If you are
Oh, and
brave, want to come on
that
and
person that
chat
was
it up.
chatting with Tom, of course, if you want to come on and defend yourself, welcome to come on, of
Yeah, I
course.
don't think he watches the videos. He was just commenting and I think it was Autistic Carnivores, but it might have been Meat Mosaic Facebook
Mhm.
group.
Right.
So, anyways, yeah, maybe you guys want to have some ideas on how to inform on the risk of eating raw meat versus the health benefits, or just the sheer joy of eating raw meat. But until next time,
No, Raymond, I'm in Kansas City, Missouri,
yeah, Justin was here like what was it, 3 weeks
a
ago,
month
month ago?
ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was here for about a week.
Yeah.
He had a bunch of family stuff to do, so he thought it was best if he just crushed it Shangri Tom's,
Casa de Toms.
Casa de Tom's. So, but yeah, all right, guys, eat some
Eat
meat,
meat, feel
feel
better,
better.
and whatever
Whatever
you
you
do,
do,
don't fall
don't
down
fall
that
down the
carb
stevia
hole.
hole.